Do I have to repeat? No.
That's fine.
Okay. So you guys are nominees for Catalyst Circle version 2. You want to represent groups of the community, like funded proposers, cohorts, stake pool operators, community advisor, toolmaker and maintainer, and general ADA holders. Exactly. There we are. And yeah, fortunately, as you are Catalyst Circle version 2 representatives, we have Catalyst Circle version 1. That means there are some guys who made already some experience and who are here to, yes, to do everything they can to help and to support you. There's also, before starting off, the members of the Catalyst Circle 1 also committed to stick around for the first month of the Catalyst Circle version 2 period, to be just available, be there all the time. If the Circle version 2 needs anything from them, yeah, we have to be there, still volunteering. Like, yeah, it's great what you do. We'll help you. Don't
you
laugh.
have to volunteer.
don't laugh about us. Exactly. And the session is mainly to say, yeah, if you have any questions, ask us anything. We try to answer anything. And besides that, it's up to you.
Yeah, Matthias.
I have a question around the logistics of the voting fest. So it is starting at 5 p.m. UTC on November 6th. How long do we have to stick around? Because I really want to attend, I'm also teaching the day and try to shuffle things sneakily around.
This will hopefully everything fixed, be set up and fixed this week. As we still have the nomination open, we don't know how many people will apply. This will depend also on how long the breakout rooms will last. And normally Friday, the nomination deadline is passed, and Saturday we will have the exact timeline, and we'll keep everybody up to date.
Yep.
Vincent.
Yeah, I just had a broader question about how you guys brought the community to the circle. More like, what tools did you guys find constructive, and what was your experience in trying to get a sense for the community's priorities before you came to the circle? And then how much time in the circle is spent on that kind of community problems? I know problem sensing is part of the circle, and I was just curious what that looked like from each, specifically the toolmakers and maintainers where I'm nominated, but in general.
Yeah, we used different processes. Each group had his own. I can say from the CA's group, we used Miroboard for problem sensing. We had 1 week so every CAs could place their problem statements there and ask 3 simple questions explaining that problem statement. And after that, we had 5 days to do a ranked voting among the elected or the listed problem statements. And then the 2 most voted ones went to the Catalyst Circle list of problem statements. And these happened during the first and the second Catalyst Circle meetings, and it was the time when the participation of the community was the highest. Because after that, it was up to us to coordinate different community members or the community and IOG to come up with solutions to the raised problem statements. But then after that, I just used, for example, Telegram and Discord.
Thank you.
I had another approach, for example. I based everything on interaction. So I had several times in the after town halls and the swarm sessions, invited people in the problem sensing process, also working with Miro to map it down everything, then setting up Google Docs, open Google Docs where everybody was able to co-write the problem statements. And the communication also mostly happened on Discord.
Yeah, for SPOs, it was basically on public meetings, and also actually a lot of one-to-one meetings with different SPOs and discussions about what's important and where we're going and what's needed to be covered and what kind of issues we are having. So that was basically initially when we decided on which, let's say, issue to take to the board, and basically then of course it was working on board with that. But it's like initial process. So initially you have to work on this and decide what kind of topics you will be, what kind of issues we'll be trying to solve, because the time is actually, these 3 months, they'll pass quite quickly. So you really have to be ready and focused and think about, also, if it's doable, and if it's not, then how to manage that it's a long, that later on somebody takes with this issue and goes and fights for it, etc. So that's, of course, we are leaving some quite unsolved issues there, which we already indicated previously. But I suppose, the next people who will be coming, they will maybe see something else as a priority and will be tackling that. So yeah, so initially just work closely with your group, with key decision makers, and also people who are already doing a lot in the area. So they have already some sense what's going on there, and what kind of issues you have there. So, but yeah, that's kind of my approach.
Thanks, that's helpful. Sounds like a lot of one-to-one and just talking to people, but also the open documents. Did people, when you had Miro boards and Google Docs open, did you find that they came to them, or did you kind of have to push them a little hard?
What was the last part of your question?
Did you have to push the community to give you problem sensing, or were people pretty forthcoming with their issues in the non one-to-one, like where you weren't typing? Did they? How was the interaction? How was the feedback from the community when you spoke to them? Did you get a lot of good problem statements? Was it mostly not gibberish? But I'm just kind of trying to get a sense of what worked and what didn't.
Yeah, from the CAs, I had to. I'm not sure if I really had to do this, but I send a reminder every 2 days in both Telegram and Discord. But the participation itself was very high. I think we had almost 30 different problem statements. Actually, we had more than that, but some were repeated, so we just merged them. And we also brainstormed about them a little bit to improve them. And I think we had a good participation between CAs. I mean, I think up to 30 or 40 CAs and VCAs participated in the process. And think that we have 500, maybe 400, 500 active CAs in the, say, past two funds. This is 10% is a high number. Yeah.
That's great, thanks. I'll leave my question then and let Alice or Andre go.
Okay, thanks. Alison.
Thanks. So I listened to some of the past meetings, which it's great that those are all public. And I know there was an issue with some circle members not able to participate or fulfill their roles. Do you have any, and obviously consistent participation is critical. Do you have any feedback or sense of what prevented participation, so we might learn from that?
This is something that we discussed in our own retrospective during the last Catalyst Circle meeting, because at last meeting we had 3 people missing. Almost only half of the circle was there.
I suppose discussion should be asked actually to those people who didn't come.
Yeah,
maybe that's would be the right way. But I suppose the activity also, it's like I don't know, maybe they have some issues with communicating or getting some feedback, or also just time consumption. But I know that for the next Catalyst Circle, definitely this will be one of the important things, that you have to be on those meetings. It's like mandatory things. Otherwise, you will be basically replaced by the next, or somebody else. Because this is, for Catalyst version 2, it will not be acceptable, that kind of behavior. So that's very important to stress out. And an administrative team will be basically managing that. So of course, the first one was an experiment, and nobody knew what will be, there, what we'll have to do. So initially it was okay, you'll have 2 hours, every 2 weeks. Yeah, but actually it was a lot more. So therefore you have to be ready to invest your time in this. And to invest your time, you really have to have support from your community. And to have support from the community, you have to communicate with it. So it's like, this works everything together. And yeah, so if you manage to get the information and support from the community, I suppose, you'll be eager to get on those meetings and share what you have learned, what you have discussed, and maybe have some kind of solutions. So that's quite individual. So I don't think we can answer that kind of question because we don't know.
Yeah, I think we can say that sorry, Felix, we've discussed about the idea of having a second or vice representative in case the first one is not available. And also we expect higher engagement now that there are rewards for being a circle participant, because we realize that if we just expect people to engage for free, this is not sustainable. So we expect this to improve as well.
I think the main reason really to call it, because don't fall in the same trap. I think each of the Catalyst Circle version 2 underestimated their responsibility and needed engagement. I think this comes to everyone. So it requires, you carry your responsibility, you have to take initiative, and this requires much more time than I expect on the beginning sometimes. Yeah, it's not just 2-3 hours per week. No, sometimes it comes to 10 hours. Sometimes even more. So, and when there aren't any clear guidelines or criteria, and you're not expecting this, then yeah, it becomes quite. And even if there's an admin team, even if there is experience now, don't fall in the same trap and say, cool, it's easy to handle. Yeah.
Yeah, and we explicitly called that out in the criteria section as 10+ hours per week to devote to this, because we did find that people probably underestimated how much time it would take to participate.
So is there a deputy or vice participant in the circle, or is that something that you are planning to have? Or how do you, even if it's compensated with some return on your time investment, how are you ensuring that that spot for that type of person's involvement is filled?
So I think that currently the admin staff will take some kind of leadership role there. So they will be managing all the time, checking if everyone is there and guiding. And there will be those people who are actually staying. When the members are changed, that they will still be there for Catalyst Circle version 2. And I don't know about basically some budget for people. I know that we tried and we applied for funds. So let's see if we'll get there. So there will be some funds. Of course, it's not like full type of salary, but at least there's something and to work with. And looking forward, of course, that next time we'll have really more budget for the people who are engaged in that.
Yeah, those are all really good questions. The question I have for all of you is a broader question. I'm going to use the metaphor of climbing a mountain and looking at Catalyst Circles as a climbing team. You're all working together. What is the peak for this mountain? I realize there's sub peaks and all that kind of stuff, but what is the real, how do you see yourselves as successful as team members of the Catalyst Circle? What are you trying to achieve?
I think we don't see the peak because it's too far ahead, too far above. We can just we can just
we have to
we can just see the next goal. We need to get here, and that's what we work for together. The goal was to solve the problem statements that we raised. Yeah.
So you have to focus on the the next peak which you can achieve in 3 months. So. But of course, you can also go for long-term ones as well. So, but it's still, we are still formatting this kind of, members and catalyst circle is like a new type of experiment. So far successful. Of course, we can do better, but yeah, it's like a long-term thing, and if it will be successful in long run, I suppose we can copy this into other groups as well. And yeah, so
A small question: how will the voting be carried out?
The voting on the election for Catalyst Circle version 2?
Yes.
Very similar to the election process of Catalyst Circle version 1. So each nominee will have a certain time to present themselves to the audience in a breakout room. And after the presentations are done, each room has their own Google form where the participants of the room can directly vote on the nominees. So nothing on chain yet, nothing.
You want to get
I
there
see.
eventually, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes, maybe we share that in the Discord or whatever, because I couldn't find it.
No. The voting form will only be shared.
No,
after
the process.
Because it's not 100% defined yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're working on it in the admin team, and we'll be releasing that probably in the next little while, just so people know what to expect in the rooms. But it's, as Felix described, nominees will have a 5-minute window to just kind of present their positions, and then and some question answer, and then at the end we'll open up the voting, and then we'll have a quick vote.
Basically, just be on the 6th of November there. Everything will be explained, step by step. So just get ready for that, and yeah, and nominators, of course, get ready, with their speeches.
And
nominees, sorry.
Just one thing to come just shortly back to Raymond's question, because I think it's important, because you asked where's the peak. I think there are some, like Victor said, the peak, we don't know where it is. But I think there are also some peaks you have to climb in each day when you are in the Catalyst Circle. You are representative. You're not the decision maker. You're not the king. You are not the lord. You represent the community. Represent the community. Represent your group. This one peak. Don't abuse the role you have. Stick to it. You are a representative. You are not a lord. You are not a whatnot lawyer or whatnot. Stick to it. I think these are some peaks which have to be done every day to make sure also, hey, what we are building here, it's not again some weird vertical political structure. It's, hey, those guys are there to represent the needs, the visions, the ideas, and the ambitions from the community in the circle. And this, I think it's important to remind on this every day.
Okay. Yeah, that helps me understand somewhat. I think what I'm getting at for you guys is, what is the long-term vision? I mean, when I first heard of the Catalyst Circle, I had an idea of what the long-term vision of the Catalyst Circle was. The way I understood it was a circle of leadership that was there to represent overall community of Cardano, and to start looking at how we're going to make decisions that are currently being made, for example, by centralized actors like IOG, right? Network parameters are currently only made by IOG. At some point, those kinds of changes will be made by the community. So I saw Catalyst Circle as an early initiative in bringing together representative leadership to start looking at how the global community is actually going to act on some of those kinds of decisions. Is that still consistent with a long-term goal for Catalyst Circle, or are you guys moving in a different direction?
Yeah, this is the main goal on the long term. And this is the Catalyst Circle right now. It's an experiment with the community leadership. So it doesn't have yet the power to make very important decisions about protocol, about the direction that Cardano or Catalyst is going, but this is probably going to happen at some point in the future. And IOG has some research teams working specifically on this matter as well. So I think that at the right time, they are going to reach out to the circle and also experiment with some things and see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Jonathan.
Hi, I was curious from all the circle representatives, it'd be nice to hear what was left hanging or what you didn't feel you got your teeth into, or was there a particular mandate from your community that you didn't feel you made headway in, or you really want to see picked up by circle members too? You know, what sort of those things are. I mean, it might just be too soon and you're just relieved to get it off your back, but I suspect there's something that you want to see done that you didn't see done, or see started but won't see the end of yet. So that could be to any of the existing Circle One members who are represented today.
Maybe some very easy tasks, for example, already like is Catalyst Circle website, Catalyst Circle addresses, email addresses, so that people can reach out to you. To have a certain awareness or our own place just for the Catalyst Circle where people know, hey, here I can contact the representatives, can go in direct interaction with them, because this is nothing what we had. So it's a little bit all over the place. And I think this is also a little bit, let's say, bad to also create awareness of the Catalyst Circle and to effectively include the community as well. I think this would be great when Catalyst Circle version 2 could work on this.
Nice.
And funding, yes.
Yes, definitely funding. That's the important thing. But yeah, I think Catalyst versions 2 should really work on the platform so that, currently everyone is using their own some kind of channels to communicate with their members and their community. So, but we should have some kind of, Catalyst owned platform where, whenever, somebody moves or goes away, that you don't lose basically the channel of communication. So that's kind of what I strongly think we need to do as soon as possible. Of course, it will involve some kind of budget. So we had actually, put budget some for that. But yeah, that's definitely, some organization things and yeah, as Felix told, like simple way as, email addresses, for each representative. So yeah.
Do you guys, another question for you, is there thought about developing a tool or already a tool that either the circle is using or their representative roles are employing, like something that pulses and polls their communities? Are you guys thinking about keeping a consistent poll and pulse on your communities and that you're representing? Is that something you guys are thinking about doing?
We thought about this, but at first, since we were still trying to figure out how the Catalyst Circle itself was going to operate, we decided to just use the tools that were available for us. But we've brainstormed a bit about how the ideal tool would look like, or which functionalities it would have, but we didn't advance much in this regard.
Okay.
Nori.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a bit on Raymond's earlier question. I think you're right that the Catalyst Circle was designed as a bridge so IOG can eventually transition governance to the community. And it's an initial experiment there. But I think there's also a desire on everybody's part, even the communities, to build up the strength of the bench to practice governance and see what it looks like and produce people within the community that are really good at that. And nobody actually knows what that looks like yet. So that's kind of, we can't see the peak. So we're practicing, and it's really a practicing stage for people to think about things and try things and sense. And like you said, there's no consistent tooling to get that sensing mechanism out there. Each community has a different way of doing that. Like Loris is heavily involved with Bakra, and they have their own kind of Mighty Networks website. Toolmakers and maintainers live a lot on Discord. I don't know what the general ADA voters have. There's Reddit and there's a bunch of other mechanisms, but that's definitely something to think about. We don't have
Twitter, I think.
Yeah, Twitter too. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think it's a good idea, but I don't know if we can find a one-size-fits-all tool.
Thank you for that, Nori. Appreciate it.
Johnny.
Yeah, I think, I introduced myself to the Catalyst Circle community about, I don't know, a little over a month ago. And just one of the things that I noted or observed that was important to me and I found very refreshing was the kind of empathy and sensibility, the civility, right? Almost like, you realize that the Catalyst Circle, there's a lot of service kind of mindset, service to this kind of community. And I think an important part of that is realizing that as part of this larger Voltaire governance, decentralized ecosystem experiment that we're all a part of is kind of helping to navigate that, but also realizing, that you're not going to be there forever. It's a limited term. And so one of the important capabilities that I really stood out to me in that first conversation with Felix, Nori, and Stephen and the rest of the team was this notion of kind of serving as an institutional memory, if you will, right? Because you're not going to solve every problem that you can't even see all the problems that are going to emerge as we pick a direction and pivot in that direction, take a few steps, new things emerge around each new corner. But as you kind of discuss, it's important to capture some sort of shared memory and pass that knowledge down to the kind of next iteration of Catalyst, so that you can say, hey, danger, we're going to get eaten by that, that kind of, you develop those kinds of instincts, right? And you pass that on in a sensible, empathetic, level-headed, civil way. So that's not to say that you're not going to have some very passionate conversations and strong opinions and everything else like that. But you also, one of the things I love about this group and this community in general is that everybody saves space for everybody else, right? So something to keep in mind.
Nice.
I think that you pointed a really nice responsibility of the Catalyst Circle as well, to be a representative body for an inclusive and diverse environment.
Yeah, and especially knowing too that, one of the things with governance, with power, and with all of this, there's some notion of responsibility. And, one of the things that within, when we launched the Circle experiment, right, knowing that, there's, don't you kind of, if you're in the US politics, right, we all wish for some notion of term limits, right? And so we kind of baked that in and built that in here. But unfortunately, I think you guys are all Catalyst Circle emeritus now. You're not off the hook just yet, right? So the term limits, it would be great if after serving a term that you play this kind of sage, advisor, elder statesman type of role, and nobody within any kind of responsibility, power source within this Catalyst community wants to abuse that power, right? And it's very much a service mindset, and I value that very much, and I appreciate you guys. If I don't say it enough, thank you all. Thank you to all this Catalyst Circle V1 folks.
One thing to this as well is there doesn't exist any code of conduct for the Catalyst Circle yet. The behavior was always respectful, always very collaborative. And another thing what I find also is quite remarkable is Catalyst Circle version 2. No one from Catalyst Circle version 1 nominates themselves for Catalyst Circle version 2. It's also to say, hey, okay, not twice in a row or something like this. No, you had your period. Now step back, give the place to others. So this is also something what is quite interesting, and it wasn't coordinated. It's just what you said too. Yes, the periods there. This might change maybe in the future, because in the last meeting we spoke already about it on the meeting before, that 3 months is maybe a very short time to get things done. So maybe we move over after time to 6 months, where we can say also, okay, the Catalyst Circle has a period of 3 months. The admin team has a period of 6 months, so that they are also there to ensure a certain transition as well between the iterations. And that's up also for the Catalyst Circle version 2. They define the criteria for Catalyst Circle version 3. Matthias and then Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Johnny, I share your observations. What I would like to point out is, and not saying that you did that, but my earlier comment when people were still joining, right? Oh, it's all the same faces. And, you know, now we have a couple of new faces, which is nice to see, but I would, because we're all humans, and a lot of people are doing a lot of work, including the Catalyst Circle members. So I want to not get to a point where the expectation is to handhold the new generation. That there should be I think it's good that there will be a transition period. I think that is important, but also for people that are interested. I mean, the administration team did a tremendous job with, you know, surfacing the actual meetings. And for me, one observation that I had, and especially in knowing that there was no facilitator, because prior to Circle V1, I said, do you need a facilitator to run this? Do you need a mediator or anything like that? Turns out V1 didn't need that. And what was interesting to me that people still learned from each other to take up less space. It was very interesting to see there was a huge difference between the first few meetings and the more recent ones. That was incredible to see for me. And yeah, just wanting to point out that it's great that, you know, people can go full-time on this, but full-time in Catalyst actually looks more like 3, 4, 5 different full-time jobs mangling that out. Yeah, I see a lot of you, because you do that, right? So funding is certainly a big part, and then the whole transition period. Understanding 3 months is not a lot of time. So I think it's more about goal setting. And also for V2, I think it's, okay, well, we still have to reevaluate, right? What is the current status? What does your group want right now, right? And for some, it's a little bit more difficult than others. But my understanding is also that you're there to represent your stakeholders. It's also important to represent the people that are not part of it, right? So general voters, it's like a very open group, right? Maybe also the people who aren't even voters yet for various reasons, right? Of course, nobody can really represent the Cardano Foundation if the Cardano Foundation isn't present, unless, you know, we also happen to have a couple of ambassadors for the Cardano Foundation in the room, but that's a whole nother discussion. So just wanting to point out why I appreciate the circle, and I look forward to see the transition from V1 to V2, and that collaboration, that added teamwork. I think that in itself is meaningful, but I also want to be realistic with the expectations. I think 10 hours of work is plenty of time to work on this, with whether it get funded or not. Because with the understanding, most of us do multiple things in the Cardano ecosystem. So I just want to point it out.
Yeah, I just want to complement this. I agree with all you said, Matthias, but I also think that it needs to be clear that you are representing your group, but not only the interests of your group. You are bringing the point of view of it on how to make Catalyst better itself. For example, let's say that the CA reward system needs to be decreased for some reason to make the process better. As a representative of the CAs, there are some CAs that might expect you to fight against this, but if this is going to improve the overall process, then it's good for everyone at the end. This is something that we've discussed at the beginning of the Catalyst Circle as well. But yeah, that's it. Jonathan.
Yeah, Matt has kind of touched on it. Do we have any indication from CF on who their representative will be going forward? And IOG, is that door still? Danny, perhaps go answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go for it, Danny. You're from IOG.
I know that there was a talk initially who would be on the CF side of the things. I'll start there. I think it was the discussion between Tommy and forgive me, who's the current CF rep?
David.
David, right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were discussing who would go first, so they might swap around the places. But again, that's up to them. As far as IOG goes, we haven't had that discussion yet.
Just in the last meeting, it was recorded as well. Dora mentioned already that he thinks about that Harris Warren what might be a nice fit for it. But
yeah,
nothing
it hasn't been confirmed yet. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, I might just dominate you, Danny.
Yeah, then he would be amazing. True.
Yeah, just clone myself. Is that how it's done these days?
Yeah, come on. You still have some time around midnight for circle stuff.
All right, but James has something to say better than myself.
Less tweets, more time in the circle.
Can't hear you, James. Something, James? We can't hear you. You're unmuted, but sound check on your side.
Audio issues again.
How's that?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Hey, just wanted to share the proposer perspective. I heard Nori's note during the town hall session that there's only one proposer nominated so far. I suppose that's me. Thanks a lot, Matthias. And the proposer, it's an honor, but it's also very daunting. And I wonder how creative we can be with the proposer role, because proposers in particular have a duty to deliver on the work they said they were going to do. And every hour I give away elsewhere is time that I am away from my responsibilities, growing the team that's supposed to deliver on our Catalyst proposal. I don't want to ask for special treatment, but I wonder if this is part of why proposers are not nominating themselves. And I wonder how creative we can be, because this would be, like the 6th job to add to the 5 that Matthias is naming right now. And it's really, really hard working in this space and working so hard and still at the end of the day feeling like even that was insufficient. So I just want to lay that out there and encourage. I don't want answers, right? I don't know what the answer is. And, if anybody has quick ones, I'm willing to listen, but I also think it's something we should all be thinking about moving forward is what do we ask of proposers here? And is there a way that we can maybe ask less time of them somehow so they can be sure to be getting their work done?
I think there's opportunity for creativity. Like we went in search of a secretary and a facilitator, and it came down to like the 6 of us decided to form a team around that rather than just select one person to do that. And that's turned out to be one of the most valuable things that we created, because it allowed us to have this transition team and not have it land on one person and have them do all sorts of stuff. So I would, since this is an experiment, I personally would encourage that kind of creativity. And it could help too, like we said, we want people to be at the meetings. And if you can't be there, it would be nice to have some team or second to fall back on to say, hey, can you fill in for me and attend? And here's what we discussed this week. And I think there's definitely room for that kind of experimentation.
And actually, I'll clarify that. I mean, a weekly or bi-weekly meeting is certainly doable, but I keep hearing this 10-hour number, that it's really a 10-hour commitment. And that's what that's what raises my concern. And I'm not sure if I could commit to that, right? But meetings, absolutely.
So I think the meetings, 2-hour meetings every 2 weeks, 90% of the stuff is happening between those meetings. And well, that's the thing. But I think also the future the future of Catalyst Circle is there won't be one circle. There won't be several circles. So also to say a goal of a circle is also to say the reproduction of its own. What happened already naturally a little bit with the admin circle now, with the admin team. So just speak with, for example, Danny, Chris, let's say, hey, how does it look like for a cohort circle, something like this? A group of well-established, well-known people come together in a small group, just need one person who is able to represent what is going on there. And it's still on a very early stage. We still have the place to experiment. It's still an experiment after all. So we should use it as well, I think so. And when it comes up as an effective solution, I think everybody will have a big win out of it. Just shortly, Danny, what do you think? Would it make sense? Something like this for the cohort, for example?
I think it would make sense. I think the beauty of the process that we're involved in, there's not really fixed boundaries to what has to be, right? There's no definition. It has to look like that. And the another element of the entire process that we're embedded with is that it allows that flexibility. So it could be just another part of the experiment within the Catalyst Circle itself. Like, can it function that way? Because we can, we can theorize about like, okay, maybe it would be better, maybe not. But unless we actually try it out and give it a go, then, we will not learn if that's actually something that we can pivot on and that we can replicate in other places. Because just like you said, this is the first circle, but there will be all kinds of circles with their own competency in terms of like what they're trying to address and what solutions and issues are they going to be talking about. So I would definitely, support an option of like where we could talk about what the coordinator, the funded cohorts could look like, that much like you guys did with the admin team, something along those lines. So we bring down the pressure that James talks about, because it's true, they have the priorities set straight in order to deliver on the challenges under which the proposals are submitted. And, every minute or hour that is taken away from that focus, it slows them down. But again, at the end of the day, we are still early, and these are sort of like acts of service in a way, trying to build something for the people and the communities down the line. So it all sort of ties together. But I would be very much open to figuring it out, and we can actually have the talking point maybe during the coordinator meeting in coming weeks, where we could bring the topic out and perhaps hash some version of a team proposer that could be part of the circle. The idea is to make sure that the communication flow is there. That's what we're after, getting that sensor out so we know like what's the temperature like, what works, what doesn't. And whether it's the team of 5 or 1 person, then it's just a technicality. If it works, both of them are fine, right? Vincent.
Yeah, pardon me if this was answered. I had an emergency to go deal with the door. I was just curious if, kind of going back to what you're saying about the communication, what does communication with IOG and Cardano Foundation look like from the circle? So I understand that the circle is a problem sensing thing for the community, but I wonder, is it also, it didn't seem like it was last time, and maybe the members can, it didn't seem like it was a distribution mechanism for inside information, not inside information, but clarifications from the foundation or from IOG that might come in between, the monthly updates or the formal stuff, or the town halls, just answering questions or kind of being that kind of communicator. Is that a thing, or is that outside the purview of the circle? Or I'm just curious what your thoughts are there, and how much the community was pressing for that, or if town hall is mostly taking care of that.
Go on, Felix. I had to do something here. I missed part of the question. Sorry.
Sure. I was just curious how much the circle participated in not just problem sensing from the community and working on those problems, but also delivering answers to the community about the ecosystem as a whole, including IOG, IOHK, Cardano Foundation, Emergo, and those resources. So I'm just wondering if the circle acted or plans to act, or if you had any experience as a bridge between the community writ large and the more formal institutions behind Cardano.
I think in this regard, well, one of the written definitions of the Catalyst Circle is to facilitate conversations within different groups. So also in regard to IoT and Cardano Foundation. Overall, I think it's really interesting to see that Catalyst Circle itself is really like a micro picture of Project Catalyst. Stakepool operators have problems to participate in Project Catalyst. Funded cohort is missing structure. It's hard for them to get off water or to get things done. Something by own initiative. The general ADA holders are mostly not represented at all. Well, all here are ADA holders, all here are voters, but we are never really speaking about problems or whatnot. I have a strong power opinion there. Although we have, but not a strong voice, let's say. Then you have the Catalyst community advisors, which are extremely engaged, extremely active. By this as well, have a certain dominative role. The toolmakers and maintainers also a little bit, highly hyperactive all over the place. Cardano Foundation is not at all present. And by lack of the structure, IoT has to decide. And Emergo is not even invited to the party. So what we have in Project Catalyst, you can really see quite well really in the Catalyst Circle. So Catalyst Circle itself, it helped a lot in, let's say, providing structure to the whole Project Catalyst simply by existing and showing, but wait, what is happening in the big scale is repeating in the really micro scale. Let's say, how do you call this in English? Yeah, goes by a scale layer. So I don't know if we arrived well to establish communications between the groups, but I think so, because some projects which have been done were always only possible to be done because different representatives collaborated with each other. So, for example, when you look on the CA onboarding process for Fund 6, where DOR came with the problem statement, hey, we might have not enough CAs to get Fund 6 round. Came to the Catalyst Circle. Catalyst Circle directly started the initiative. The goal was to onboard 30 CAs or 40 CAs in between 2 weeks, and we arrived to onboard 300 in 2 weeks. So, and simply and this was not coordinated, this was not even a problem sensed, not a sense problem from the communities. It was just a problem which was brought into the circle, and then bam, and showed a huge value. Okay, hey, we are speaking to each other, we're using each other networks, each other resources, and wow, extremely fast, get shit done. So I think there is value, and on another part also to not forget, for example, the community. We are army of volunteers. IoT, they are an enterprise. They hire a lot of very skilled people. They just recruited this year, I think, something around 200-300 people. Cardano Foundation is run by 30-40 people. What do you really want to expect there? They don't even have the human resources and the bandwidth to actively participate. And these are also learnings from the Catalyst Circle, where you say, okay, so how is the structure overall looks like, and what needs to be done?
Yeah, just adding on top of that, and also answering the other part of Vincent's question about communication. Yes, we acted as a representative to onboard people and answer their questions, even though this was not our official role, but we cannot say that we are not on the spotlight by being in the Catalyst Circle. So people know about us and they come to us asking questions, and even if we don't know how to answer, then we can point out to someone or some place where they can get information.
But I didn't feel a lot of pressure from the community side to say, for example, hey, you are sitting there with IoT, tell them they have to do this. Not at all.
True. Yeah. Johnny.
Yeah, I think there's also this notion of, in urban planning, there's a notion of what they call desire paths, also known as cow paths, pirate paths, beast trails, and sometimes described as paths that have made themselves. They're the kind of worn grass trail, where the grass has been worn down, where the urban planners have created sidewalks and walkways, and yet people have decided it's more efficient to walk across this yard, and there's a worn grass path there. And I think, one function or one way to approach this is to identify where some of those grass paths are, those desire paths are, and kind of document them, right? Or to try to say, hey, well, does there need to be something that is more a safer solution, right, than just directing people to the grass path, right, that cuts across somebody's yard. The land, the yard owner, the homeowner might get annoyed. It might not be as well lit, and so you kind of want to say, okay, well, maybe we need to put a paved path in there. And so I think that's another potential way to approach this, and just kind of identifying and seeing those desire paths. And I'll post an article in here that kind of chat that describes this idea.
Yeah, I think James' suggestion earlier today was one of these desired paths, maybe.
Definitely. Which also comes to the point that we saw that in the Cuttle circle, it's really helpful if you have a little bit like your own team with which you are walking. So there's a circle made of circles. So this is the desire of, maybe also, sometimes, for example, what I feel a little weird is to say, wait, I was elected from some people to do something what I'm not even really exactly know what I should do and what I expect and how do I manage the expectations. And when I make a decision, should I make the decision by myself or not? So also say, okay, so one desire is, I think, as well to pilot really active participation from the community in the Catalyst circle. Like you said, to find these short lines, really, okay, how can this happen fast and effective, transparent and inclusive? Because even for you, Matthias, if you run, Ray, who else in the room, Allison, you all have a shitload of stuff to do already, which makes you a good nominee as well. But yeah, how much
if you want to get something done, ask a busy person.
So Danny,
capacity building.
So Danny, you're definitely the right match for.
Well, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you in the first version of this, and everybody who's showing up for the second one, for everything you've done, for running this experiment, for being open to these uncharted waters, and for holding a space for others to explore and discover all the gifts that we have inside of ourselves and how those things are coming together. It's really beautiful to see. It's why I'm here. I think my hope really is to just be a solid node of consensus that aggregates a lot of inputs and makes it valuable to all of you guys. That's what I see happening here. So very happy just to see who is here, whether I'm nominated or not, or whatever happens. I see something really beautiful happening here, something very necessary. for our future.
Thank you.
Danny.
Yeah, I was just going to thank you, Ray. I haven't seen you in a while, so I hope you're doing well.
Likewise, yeah, it's great to see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. And that's the part of like the catalyst. And I think it's still it can be really intimidating to a lot of groups out there. So I would, especially that you are here, and Loris has tried to make that tremendous task himself as well. And he's done a hell of a job. But I think we can still push it even further, because I think a lot of state pool operators are still on the fringes, and they're maybe just like afraid or not sure how they can participate, and they're a very vital part of the ecosystem. So when you are engaging in those conversations, and I know you do, both of you, just feel free to pass that on so that so no one feels like they're being left out or not being considered. And Catalyst Circle is just like one of those venues where those state pool operators can showcase their, the interest and everything which goes with it. So, because I know I talk still to many state pool operators, and they're a little, afraid a bit about what the Catalyst is and whether they have a role to play and whatnot. So when you are in those hallways and in those meeting rooms, just feel free to pass an open hand that, all these meetings, town halls, breakout rooms, they're all open, and we'd love to have them more hang out around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
One thing, I didn't hear any critics so far, because there should be critics.
We
Everyone
kicked them
is
out
polite.
after they drew on the screen.
I think Matthias has one.
Oh, go for it.
Well, I mean, the one that has been mentioned is the lack of participation from important stakeholders, right, that were elected. I think that is the big obvious one. But I also believe that the whole group of general voters is underrepresented, and it's not just due to absence of the elected official, I would say. I would like to get an idea how we can include more of the Cardano community. And I would also assume that, general voters, even though voters is not the right term, at least with the 500 ADA limit right now, but general ADA holders, that's what I would like to see. But then potentially also the people that are interested in ADA but did not make quite a jump. Like, even I have some people on my team working on Win-Win that came from the more traditional web stack world, that I assume are still to this day not ADA holders, even after working on this for 2 months now. And I would like for them to be represented as well. That's my wish, and that's my critique, essentially.
I think it's a fair critique, but I'm going to present this paradox that I think the general ADA voter would never attend a Catalyst town hall and doesn't vote in Catalyst. I would posit that they would rather just most of my friends that are the general ADA holders that come to me for questions about Cardano, and ask me, is it going to be $5 by the end of the year, and et cetera, right? I think if somehow we could capture that, right? If we can capture that point of view, that perspective, but just by virtue of the fact that you're here, that you're at Catalyst, I don't think it's not possible to represent the general ADA holder viewpoint and be so involved in Catalyst. I just think it's a weird paradox, but that's just my perspective. One thing I've thought, might be interesting, right, is, but celebrate that, embrace that perspective somehow. And somebody who's unapologetically very much, spends a lot of time on crypto Twitter, YouTube, and all those other things, and doesn't care how any of the stuff works behind the scenes, and let them represent that point of view. Because it's a real one, and I think it's quite frankly underrepresented in the Catalyst community, right? So
maybe we need a When Lambo representative.
Yeah, it's if the shoe fits,
It sounds like another circle, when Lambo circles.
Yeah.
But joking aside, I mean, I think it's a really, really important question, because the point of decentralization is to have the broad community, the whole population engaged somehow. And so how do you bring all of this amazing energy that the people who are really committed have to the person who is not really committed but who we need to participate to have the experiment truly work, to have it be government by the whole community? So yeah, I completely agree with you that it's a paradox, but I also think it's an important challenge to tackle for the functioning of the democratic governance process.
Maybe Charles can talk about it and do a whiteboarding or an AMA.
And then we'll get the wed Lambo holders, voters.
Yeah.
Maybe this would be a nice task already for Catalyst Circle version 2. Map out. Right now, we have 7 groups represented in the Catalyst Circle. There are DeFi guys, NFT guys, there are somewhat artists or social or whatnot. Mapping out the ecosystem, find archetypes, find groups which are not represented yet. Say, hey, maybe they should be represented in Circle version 3. How should this look like? Or creating other circles, but then, oh, wait, when we have several circles, how do they coordinate? How do they communicate with each other? So.
And at the risk of asking a bad political question, you just said that Emergo is not included. Why is that?
Wrong question. Next one.
No,
sorry.
No. I'll tell you right now, I work at IOG, right? And I don't know the full context and history on that, right? I think it's a fair question. We shouldn't avoid it. We shouldn't try to dance around it, right? But I wish I knew, right? And I think more than anything, I think just it's not that they haven't been invited or they haven't had the opportunity or they aren't aware. There's a little bit of self-selection, I think, that happens there as well. So.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's been visible in the community that Emergo is going through a little bit of transformation. There's been some personnel change throughout major ranks within the company, which has affected its flow. So I think the primary focus these weeks and months for Emergo is to restabilize in the kind of environment, just judging from outside. And once they've regained their footing and they've plugged in all the posts that they're also hiring for, I can imagine them to start being more active. But at this point, if I were to guess, that has also some point with it about where their attention needs to be right now is focus on themselves, so they can reintroduce themselves as a prominent player once more, just like they are. So, but yeah, we don't have those answers,
Yeah, regarding
personal
this,
observations.
Yeah, excuse me. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I have seen once there is a clear distribution regarding the task between input output and Emergo. And as far as I remember, input output has more focus on the community than Emergo, and Emergo has more focus on the technical development and things like that. I have seen such kind of distribution regarding the task sometime, but I don't really remember that, to be honest. But there was such kind of distribution among the different stakeholders.
I wouldn't say that in this regard. For example, activity with the community can be interpreted in many matters. For example, Emergo made the Euro wallet. Well, this is a huge service for the community. So would we say now that they don't work with the community? I'm not so sure about. So.
Yeah, everybody works with the community when you think of it. And, Emergo, I think just a little bit of distinction. So I think IOG is very much involved on the technical side of the things, the development of the tech stack. Emergo's, as far as I can recall, its primary goal was the commercialization of the Cardano. And, I think for years they've been a little bit hindered just by the fact that, like, in order to do that, you need to have some ready-made tech. And I think, this is where probably has delayed Emergo's, activities over the years, because the tech stack needs to be ready before Emergo can start pushing out those big commercial projects. So I think they've been trying to find themselves, their role and their support within ecosystem wherever they could. There was also introduction of the Light Wallet. They're very much so embedded in the community. They're actually hiring a couple of community managers to start helping around the Yoroi wallet, because we know Yoroi has had some fair share of issues, just like any development technology could have. So I think they're trying to address that as well. So at the end of the day, wherever we started in those individual spheres of influence of, like, okay, these guys were supposed to be building the tech, these guys are doing the commercial aspects, as Cardano Foundation is doing some like guardianship. At the end of the day, every single aspect will need to be intertwined with community one way or another. And just to hide behind the fact that, like, we're the tech guys, we don't speak to someone because we don't understand, like, that gap will no longer fly in the future. So that bi-directional communication will need to be between any and all entities that actually interact and serve and support Cardano community. And I think each one of those is trying to do their best, but it's a huge community, things are growing. So, like, that's why I personally love the ownership of a lot of different tasks which community is now taking upon themselves, because yeah, you can wait for IOG, you can wait for CF, you can wait for Emergo to solve certain problems, but I think we're getting to the point where the tools are starting, become available, where community can start building and supporting, because that's the future we want to be in. We don't want to be dependent on one company or a series of companies. It needs to be a self-sustaining network which can withstand adversaries as such. So yeah, definitely bright future, hopefully ahead of us, but lots of work to do.
Yeah, I think where we're going, we don't need no darn custodians.
Grassroots everywhere.
I'd like to pick up a bit on the Emergo issue, but more on toolmakers and maintainers. At the last meeting, I think it came up in feedback about what is a toolmaker and what is a maintainer. And it occurs to me that mentioning Emergo that maybe there needs to be a representative, maybe in circle representatives for developers, and then maybe make a distinction between that as tool makers and then maintainers who produce more community-based tools or support the community more. But of course, that would mean adding another member. So I'm not sure if that's a good idea, but there seems to be a lack of development representation in terms of hardcore developers, I think, from like maybe Plutus or stuff like that.
Yeah, there are several different. It goes back to that drawing that I think I made, right? The notion of development of Cardano, development on Cardano, right? Governance of Cardano, and then governance growth of the ecosystem, right? Here, maybe it just might help if I just bring that up, just because I think it's a useful depiction, and it's been relatively somewhat robust in that, when I've shared it with other folks, I think it seems to stand up to discussion and debate, and doesn't need to evolve a little too much. But if you don't mind, I'll because it's just really my my thinking around this, right? And I think that potentially there's where there though you see some, I think, overlap is that on this development on Cardano, right? I think when Charles, I've heard him talk about it in the past, he says that Emergo was set up to be the for-profit arm, to go ahead and feel free to go out and make as much money on Cardano as possible, right? And using that profit incentive to sign partners up, to get customers deployed, to do all those things, to unshackle them from, because Cardano Foundation is nonprofit, so it can't go out and try to generate and do all these licensing deals and do all these other things. It's not able to, right? But where I think we've seen potentially some overlap, though, is now IOG is doing a lot of the commercial work, right? because it just makes sense. We're not a nonprofit. I think we have a lot of engineering talent, but I think candidly in Charles's mind, he doesn't want IOG to be limited to just commercial endeavors on strictly Cardano, right? Charles really wants to solve the hardest problems, right? And those require a lot of engineering and research, right? And Emergo can still play that role of being very much focused on Cardano, a commercial success, commercial adoption. And if you look at this side of development on Cardano, Emergo can play a very strong role here. And even here, I think Emergo can play a strong role under alliances and partners, right? They can work with, come up with a system and a framework for certifying global SIs, systems integrators, as being, platinum Cardano implementation partners, right? They could do things like coming up with DeFi standards and NFT marketplace standards or protocols for data exchange or whatnot. They can work with commercial ISVs to certify their libraries or plugins or provide commercial support for SDKs and whatnot, right? There's a lot of opportunities there, I think, for Emergo to play a very strong role here on this side of development on Cardano. So just something, to kind of frame the way I'm thinking and looking very holistically across the whole ecosystem. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that was something I think I have seen before. That's why I have seen such kind of distribution between the different holders. Maybe it's a bit about the way of working, because I noticed that input output really discovered how to work in distance, and all the stuff are working remote. Instead, Emergo is, I think, working in only within their region, not working with the people remote. So maybe that's why input output is a bit more global and doing much more things and being active in different roles. Maybe I would say it's because of the way of working. They cannot participate everywhere.
Yeah.
And for the nominees, are there still questions regarding Catalyst Circle version 2?
We changed topic.
Yeah, just wanted to move back a little bit.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah.
So, sorry for it. But for me, it's just important that the people who show up here, that they have the possibility to get everything what they need.
Not for me, but I just echo the words from before. Thank you for all the volunteering that you do to smooth the path for the people who are hoping to follow in your footsteps.
And that Git book of all of your content is really fascinating. It's really good to have a resource like that.
The Git book is totally made by Stephen Wittenstahl, who's here on the call as well, with his project of Q&A DAO. He's doing a lot of work, not only for Catalyst Circle, also for other projects. And yeah, definitely, Stephen, dude, amazing work, amazing job. Because if we wouldn't have, and this is also without Stephen, he just started without any permission, without any coordination to Catalyst Circle. He just started to track the stuff. And if we wouldn't have Stephen, now we wouldn't have anything about the Catalyst Circle, to be honest, about the history. There wouldn't be any documentation, which also shows how important the community initiative is. And it's a permissionless environment. Do it.
Yeah, so if we don't have any further questions, I think we can end this meeting, at least officially.